in affirmative government, we have APU A, Mark, Media, and Raihanur, and reply. In opposition, we have WSDC ENA with Nishan, Abrid, and Evan, and reply by Abrid. So the motion about whether or not insurance companies would be allowed to use the results of genetic tests to assess future potential customers' house and rights, Prime Minister, firm motion that stands in his name.
Sorry, so debate.
Yeah.
So what do we do, sir?
1 hour.
So you debate until 6 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
7:30.
7:30. Yeah, 7:30.
Yeah. It
So
will finish at
last 7 lah.
Yes.
couple-ish.
Alright, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Word from sponsor.
Was that on stream?
Word from sponsor.
Alright.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Alright, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to paint two scenarios. Firstly, you're an individual, you have insurance, you've been paying insurance for as long as you can remember. But suddenly now, because of the genetic predisposition that you had, you're now stuck with cancer. And suddenly, this convenient time, the insurance company comes to you and says that, well, we didn't really think it was covered in your insurance plan. Unfortunately, we are now not able to pay for the cost of your medical treatment because this was not something that was factored into our plans at the moment that you started paying premiums to us. First scenario. Second scenario, I'm going to talk to you about how people who have family members, who have had cancer, who have had other diseases, but now insurance companies intentionally jack up the prices for their premiums when they want to be covered because you know your family has a history of cancer, you want to be indemnified against it as well. But now insurance companies tell you because you have a family member who had cancer, maybe like there's a whole variety of factors that cause cancer, not necessarily genetic. You inherit the genetic trait, right? But because you had a family member who had cancer, they increase the price for you as well. And you have very little that you can say about it because you simply cannot prove that you did not genetically inherit that cancer from a relative. We think that in today's like modern day and age, the genetic test make it possible you determine whether you can accurately determine whether you have a genetic predisposition towards certain kinds of diseases. We think it would be morally irresponsible. They will deny insurance companies the ability to utilize this genetic result when it comes to assessing their potential customers. So what are firstly, that individuals who have genetic conditions are more likely to be protected under our law the moment we allow insurance companies to have access to this information. Secondly, I'll tell you that individuals who don't have any kind of genetically inherited diseases are able to also prove their condition to insurance companies as well. But thirdly, I'll tell you, because now insurance companies have access to this information, that ultimately they will be able to lower their costs, and when they lower their costs, they will be able to provide lower premiums and therefore lower insurance costs for everyone, right? So before we move on to that, firstly, some mechanisms, right? They are going to regulate the insurance companies because we only think that it's responsible where we allow them the ability to view these results of genetics. That we will also, in their other hand, limit their ability to arbitrarily raise premiums. We don't think that this is likely to occur because of the unwanted outcome, but still we see that after limiting some people in the short, and that is why it's more responsible to model this out of the debate, right? And secondly, we tell you that like government subsidizes insurance, especially when it comes to people who have certain diseases. But we think that now, then the insurance company to view the results of genetic tests, that the government is now better able to accurately provide these kind of subsidies because they are now able to better determine who is more likely to be to carry certain kinds of genetic defects or not, right? So,
Okay, sir.
Okay, before I move on to my first point, how people who have genetic conditions are more likely to be affected. Sure.
So I have a question. If you allow these companies to utilize the results of the genetic test and they see in their interest to raise it because it's a higher risk, would you allow them to do that?
Firstly, there's a third outcome. We think that insurance companies are better able to assess risk in total, that their cost lowers, right? Because now you don't have to cover so many different things at any one time. But we tell you that there's not just one insurance company in the world. And on that, we think that the competing insurance companies are now better able to, like, it's a race to the bottom, right? Because you want to capture your share of the market. You want to capture your share of the market by lowering your cost. I think that's much better served on our side. So, right, on to individuals who have genetic conditions. They actually have genetic conditions. They have tests without COVID. Because when we allow insurance companies to do the results of genetic tests, we're not just allowing them like to see it. Like, I mean, you can choose to see it or you can choose not to look at it. It now comes with an obligation. And now they have to factor in the simple fact that these individuals may or may not have a genetic defect when it comes to training and structuring the kind of insurance packages that they do to assessing risk, evaluating potential customers. So right, individuals who have genetic conditions. Now we tell you that people who are less likely to be not covered by insurance when the genetic defect actually kicks in, because now it's covered under their insurance plan. Prior to this, under status quo, insurance companies had the convenient excuse that, well, we didn't know it wasn't covered under your plan, so now that you have it, we're not going to pay you because it wasn't a realistic burden that the insurance company could have taken. But now that they have the ability to view this genetic test, we think that their excuse disappears. We think that the moment they were able to look into their customers' genetic records and see that they had a predisposition towards cancer, that these companies are now unable to conveniently say that no, we're not going to cover you for cancer because we didn't know that you were a particular liability or particular risk towards it, right? So we think that insurance plans are required to factor in these genetic predispositions before setting premiums and setting the overall cost of their package. And we see that now, since insurance companies have access to this information, and when they, when they demonstrate access to general public, now these people are able to better rationalize and assess the risk of not having insurance versus, for example, having to pay the premiums but having greater security, right? So we think that now, but under our model, that coverage is no longer an illusion. That they can't just simply make this disappear and that people will be covered under our side. But we also tell you that individuals who have family members who have histories of cancer are not able to prove that they are not a direct inherit, do not directly inherit those genetic defects from their family members. Then now insurance companies cannot arbitrarily raise the price just because the family members had a previous risk. They can prove that the individual can now prove that he is not in a risk, and therefore you can't simply put on additional charges to him, right? We think that they will be able to reject additional and unnecessary insurance policies because it will be medical, right? For an insurance company charge for harm that could not unrealistically exist. And now, under our side, we say that insurance companies cannot simply claim that they were ignorant of the fact that these could exist, right? And these genetic defects could exist. But now, since they can statistically assess genetic risks and structure and compensate for it, they will come out with more accurate plans because now you don't need to cover everything. So they can lower their costs of production. Media will explain more on this. But we say that because of that, and because there are competing rival insurance companies that will do the same, they just capture the share of the market, they will lower premiums for the customers. I think this ultimately benefits everyone, right? So, all right, for all those reasons, we are out. Yeah.
Professor, now like the leader of opposition.
What does the genetic test show you? Probably a higher propensity for a certain hereditary disease, whether that might mean it's genetically more likely you will get heart conditions or cancer, essentially what a genetic test will show. And logically speaking, companies will factor that as a risk. Should your genetic test show a higher propensity for cancer, obviously you are a higher risk, therefore a worse prospect for risk-adverse insurance companies. It is in this instance that they will have higher premiums and turn you away. Not when you actually get cancer, but right from the get-go, when we think that you have a higher propensity for cancer. Just look at the only harm we heard in Mark's speech was this. I'm insured with the company, they don't know my genetic background, they had no idea I was going to get cancer, then I get cancer. Good God. And here am I I'm in the hospital bed, and suddenly the insurance agent comes to the hospital and says, sorry man, we didn't cover this because we didn't know you would get cancer. No, look, here's the thing. People who, when you open genetic tests and at the very mere sniffing of the risk of cancer, they would already have turned you away now that they have access to the genetic material. So that person that had cancer, under your new model of allowing access, would never have gotten the insurance to begin with, This is bad because a lot of people who have a slight risk for cancer but never end up getting cancer still get uninsured under your model because they are turned away from the get-go because of that risk. But even in your best case, should they get cancer at the end of the day, it's no different in our side of the house than yours. Because in your side of the house, the person was uninsured, and our side of the house, he was also uninsured because your companies have turned him away when they've sniffed out that risk prior, when they've opened up your genetic test. If this is a problem, then we just won't let insurance companies do that. If you're in the cancer bed and you've already signed a deal with an insurance company to insure you, they should insure you. And if they don't, we're happy for you to press charges and we'll back you up in doing that. Our case then is this, that given your genetic background is something you cannot control, we are against insurance companies, A, charging higher premiums, and B, turning people away as victims of God for things they had little control over. Essentially, through opposition, we are saying your genetic background should be of no consequence to how insurance companies assess your risk, how insurance companies dole out premiums. Now, in doing so, let's talk about how insurance companies work and why they are risk averse. Let's be very clear. We're okay with insurance companies turning away skydivers and people practicing extremely dangerous lifestyles. The difference here is that, yes, these people are incredibly high risk, you're likely to get hurt, and it's reasonable for an insurance company to think, okay, if I take on Bob the skydiver, I'm probably going to lose profit because he's probably going to get hurt. So I'm not going to take on Bob the skydiver, or if I do, then I'm going to charge him a high premium. This is okay because Bob the skydiver opted into skydiving. This is a lifestyle that he consented to carry out and therefore is completely responsible for the consequences of the lifestyle. Whether it means getting hurt skydiving or not getting insurance because of the possibility of getting hurt skydiving. So that's great. But the problem though is, what about things that you couldn't consent into doing? You couldn't control your genetic background and you can do nothing to change your background. Where Bob can stop skydiving at that point access insurance that he previously could not, the person with a genetic propensity for cancer couldn't stop having a genetic propensity of cancer. And because he couldn't opt out, the person is a victim of crime of omission that both the state and the insurance company was complicit in compensating. Now, this is especially harmful because insurance is really important for people for a variety of reasons. And I'm sure this is not contentious, but insurance is a safety net when you get hurt. It helps you plan your life with a bit more assurance and reassurance, and this gives you a sense of like, it helps you with your anxiety, it helps you live a more meaningful life. It helps you get back on your feet when things go awry or your house burns down or a natural disaster happens. A lot of times, insurance companies are better at doing this sort of thing than governments because insurance companies aren't tied down. I mean, they have, to their advantage, corporate flexibility, they have profit incentives, they don't have to deal with the lack of public will and the political intricacies. Therefore, it's great when governments and insurance companies work hand in hand. And when these companies work hand in hand, we tell them to push people away from things that they couldn't control and things that they couldn't opt out of is unjust. Because these people are now omitted from enjoying a standard of life that they know will never be able to enjoy. They're never going to get insurance under a company that's like to turn them away, and because your life is being made worse off for conditions you cannot control, we think that crime of omission is horrible. And yes.
Wait, how about people who don't have genetic predispositions? Are they benefited under our model?
Exactly. So right now, when I come into an insurance company and ask for insurance, the current assumption is that I don't have a genetic condition. Yeah, when you open up the records for genetic condition, the insurance company is not looking to see if you're okay. They're looking to see if you're not okay. And because your genetic map is huge, looking into your genetic material is likely to yield some sort of risk, some isolated risk somewhere in your web of metabolic pathways to make itself clear. The insurance companies are actively digging this risk out. It's more likely that they find risk, they find what they're looking for, and you get pushed away. Therefore, it's more reasonable to believe that less people are going to get insured under your side, given that insurance companies are incredibly risk adverse. So we say, given that, it's horrible people with genetic disabilities be pushed out of the system they couldn't control. That's always in of itself principally wrong. But noticing the importance of insurance in people's lives, let's draw a parallel to corporate social responsibility and why we're happy to hurt profits, even in the worst case, if it means getting everybody insured or everybody insured fairly on a fair metric. Because we do understand, If there is a propensity to get cancer, the person does get cancer, insurance companies stand to lose, but that's okay, because we think there's a corporate social responsibility factor involved. For various reasons, we need to commercial state our state, because our state must be higher than the needs of your company, and for that alone, you should be in line with the principles of the state. This is similar with media broadcast companies, who even if they make money off violent TV shows, aren't allowed to air those at certain hours because corporate social responsibility. Worse than that, you are allowed to fearmonger, because being an insurance company, states are happy with you ramping up fear in society so you can sell your product. We let you do that, but at least because we're giving you all these benefits and freedoms, you should be bound to a corporate social responsibility, and that responsibility makes sure that you insure people, that's a confusing sentence, ensures that you insure people so that they don't get omitted from a system they have no control over. We don't want you to be victims of God, and we want the most amount of people to be insured. Rest assured, we will insure you.
Oh, thanks.
Both sides have agreed that the problems that insurance companies are a jackass and we need to solve that problem. Then the question becomes who solves that problem better, and we'll talk further that later in my arguments about this efficacy of our motion and how we increase accountability for these insurance companies. But before that, a couple of rebuttals, right? He tells you, he spends a good 3-minute speech, right, telling you about how we cannot control the background of these individuals. We agree, that's the problem. Because when you talk about these individuals with a high genetic with the genetic predisposition, right? Without these genetics tests, you assume that because your parents had cancer, your child is naturally going to get cancer, and insurance companies reject these people from actually getting insurance in the first place. We tell you on our side, when insurance companies are allowed to view these genetic tests, these people are better protected under our model, because they can go to the insurance company and say, suck it, I do not have cancer, give me insurance. These people are not protected under your model whatsoever. But secondly, we tell you that when even if you want to consider those of higher propensity, we tell you that then there is, because we allow the insurance company to calculate those risks, that means they will be less incentivized to reject those insurance. I want to talk about that later in my speech. But we tell you that even with those people with high propensity for those cancer diseases, we tell you that now these insurance companies cannot say that the moment you get the disease, say, no, we're not going to pay you anything if you just got cancer. A lot of these insurance companies use the narrative, right, when it comes to things like they refuse to pay for the medical costs of people with cancer simply because no, it was not included in your plan, therefore we're not going to pay you. These are exactly how these patients are screwed over, and they have never came up here and provided a mechanism on how to protect these individuals, right? We tell you that under our side, there is now more accountability because these insurance companies cannot say, no, we did not take that into risk, therefore we can check your payouts. Now we tell you that the insurance company have to make those payouts because they knew about the genetic test sit down, because they knew about the problems that have occurred. He told you also that these people who have higher propensity don't get insurance. We tell you that's false. They do, right? People who are in high-risk jobs do get those insurance, but at a higher premiums. But even we protect you from the higher premiums under our case, because as Mark has clearly told you, we told you that we would that there will be regulation on the premiums that you get, and more importantly, there will be a government subsidized on the insurance services. This means there is a reduced overall cost for the insurances. We think we allow for motivation for insurance companies to provide those sort of incentives. Sit down. We tell you also that when the government subsidizes all this insurance service, the insurers can make better plans, right? We tell you that they would be able to calculate the risk that you were so concerned about, identify them better, and tailor better plans for these individuals with diseases and so forth. And in the case where you talk about where they're profit motivated, ladies and gentlemen, we think that if there's a high number of people with a sort of diseases such as cancer, then it would be in their best interest to also include them, especially when we talked about corporate social responsibility. I don't even tell you what that is. Corporate social responsibility is about the commitment of the company itself to give back to the community. If so many of your citizens are telling you, screw you insurance companies, why are you not giving these individuals insurance companies? I think that is the motivation for these insurance companies to give these individuals insurance in the first place. And in the case of where we have this corporate social responsibility idea, right, we tell you that in that case, right, where we have the action for the community, then there isn't insurance, especially when we have a large number of people. There's like a term for this, like don't exactly know, but it's large numbers, right? When you have more people accessing that insurance, there is a reduced cost itself for the cost that comes from those insurance. Therefore, the more people they can get into those insurance plans, the less cost will suffer overall. That means there is an incentive for these insurance companies to get anything sit down because they are profit motivated, as you say, right? We tell you also that in so we told you already about how these individuals under their side get diseases and rejected from getting those payouts, and we better solve those issues. But we also tell you that when we told you about these higher numbers, right? But we also told you about how when we have those because the claims that the insurance companies have made in status quo was that it's an unknown risk. It's a high risk, right? Tell you that then there is no accountability for the only excessive charges that they tend to set on these people, right? We tell you that when we reduce this how, because now we can identify the risk of all these diseases that are identified through these genetic tests. That is something that we exclusively provide. Before I go to my arguments, yes.
You are copying out the debate. Will you allow insurance companies to utilize this test in turning away people that are debate, allowing people to utilize the data?
Yeah, very fancy words, but I already answered that earlier, right? I've already told you about how these individuals will be better protected under. We've already told you about the government regulation from setting high premiums. We've told you about how when there's a high number of people identified for these medical diseases, then there will be a reduced cost because of the increasing number of people who can access this insurance, and therefore insurance companies will be motivated. But even if you don't agree with that, there's corporate social responsibility. If the people are so unhappy about the lack of services that come for these medical diseases, then we now have basically because of corporate social responsibility. You accept that argument, you have to accept this, and I'll move on to my arguments about how we increase the incentive for those companies, more accountability, and the of our motion. See, when we implement this motion before, it was difficult for any individuals to make claims and make any claims against these insurance companies, right? So we tell you that we will be able to force these insurance companies. But more importantly, when we identify the genetic diseases that require help, the state will be able to aim sectors to subsidize, right? Because when we tell you that when government is reducing the cost of insurance, the cost of insurance is reduced by the reducing cost of service. We tell you that when the government can better identify insurance plans for which medical disease can be, the government can better identify what insurance plans works for which medical diseases can be identified by our model. Why is this important? Because we tell you that when these diseases are identified, we can have better plans. What have we told you today? We told you 3 things, right? We told you about how, we told you, 4 things actually. We told you about how we cannot allow these insurance companies to push these individuals around. We told you about how better for these individuals. And we told you about how those people with lower propensity are better protected under our model. For those reasons, go with APU A.
Yeah. Right, thank you, Prime Minister Nitya. I'd like to invite Deputy Law Officer.
So, Mr. Speaker, this debate was supposed to be about insurance companies utilizing and assessing risk, not about people that being able to utilize genetic disorders as a defense against insurance companies denying such a thing. But the debate became about whether or not the utilization of genetics is important to the structure of insurance companies, whether or not there's a valid thing to consider. So, in assessing that, there are 2 issues in this debate. A, how should insurance companies act and how do we change that? But B, patients and what happens to them within this debate. So the first question they told us it's important for two reasons. A, the insurance companies claim ignorance, which means they did not know you had a genetic disease, therefore they shouldn't cover you when things go wrong. Or B, they end up jacking the prices when you are on your cancer bed and you need treatment. To that, we say the solution is simple. The solution is not to allow access to genetic information or potential patients or people in the future. It's to end up doing that. You consented to insuring this person in the beginning. You consented full knowing whether that this individual could potentially and like everyone get cancer. Why is genetics even part of the equation to begin with? So we think claiming ignorance or jack prices when the disease has happened shouldn't be allowed. So the solution is not to allow them access to genetic tests, but to disallow such practices that do not, but considering people have been paying all their lives, that they do not be allowed this to happen. But second of all, this debate is how does that change anything? If indeed the claim is that I have a genetic disease, therefore I should be covered, that claim can exist independent of whether or not I have a genetic disease to begin with. If I pay insurance my whole life, it does not matter if I had a cancer, if I had cancer at the end of the day, we must have it the same right. But what does allowing the access to disease or genetic tests allow insurance to do? It allows them to avert from covering people to be deemed. So this debate is not only about people who currently have insurance, it's about people who are potentially going to have insurance. Because you can see that they need structure in this race that it's important for them to do so. But considering they are always finding reasons to raise premiums, because there might be some disease in your family that could eventually pop up, God knows where, or B, that you're going to get cancer that's going to cost a large amount of money because it's hereditary. You don't allow them to cover these people to begin with. So it's a trade-off. Rather than claim ignorance later, we said, sure, it's something that we can prevent, but it does happen, we'd rather that this person not being cared and be turned away by insurance. It's something you will still allow under your side. So if that's the case, Speaker, you don't change the actions of these companies, but you make them more a burden to risk. So we don't agree that they'll restructure the company to take into account this risk, as opposed to just catering to clients that don't have genetic diseases, that don't have a high propensity. So we think that's not the dichotomy, and you don't allow that to happen. But before I continue, sure.
Wait, but the moment you allow insurance companies to more accurately assess the risk, they're more likely to provide these people with insurance, because now they know the likelihood of when you get cancer and they can set the premiums accordingly.
So the premise is here. If insurance companies can assess risk and you are a high risk, then they will take you for it. That's false. If you are a high risk, it's unknown whether you're going to get that disease, they are more likely to cover you. But if it's hereditary and it's almost definitely you're going to get it, they are more likely to turn you away. When I can get high premium customers who are not genetically disadvantaged, but like skydivers or other people, why not just go to them when they are less likely to die than a person who technically is predisposition to get diabetes or cancer? We think they'll avert that risk as opposed to increasing higher premium when the trade-off is like to give you cancer therapy for 3 more years. So we think you don't allow people to get covered under your model. So we'd rather than trade off. But second thing, Mr. Speaker, is how is the capacity of people to say, I had a genetic disease and you're victimizing it, any more powerful than any other claim right now? You can claim corporate negligence. You can claim this corporation did you unfair. You can claim that it's a premium and therefore the company should have done this. So why is it an exclusive claim that the benefit? You don't understand why that is true. But the second debate is about structuring insurance companies. How do they structure themselves? Do we have the structure for such? Because the first thing she said was, if there's a higher number of people that are at risk, that means they can pool money in a better manner and they can charge them higher premiums, and therefore that they benefit. So the first thing we will say is we negate that. We don't think people of pre-physician positions should be paid every we don't think that's a fair burden for insurance companies to structure in at all. But the second thing we will say is they should structure it based on general liability because you are going to incur. But the third thing, Mr. Speaker, you don't need to structure it anyway. There will be huge amounts of money from premiums in general. We think they have the capacity or the buffer capacity to do it. So A, you don't need to structure it, but B, the high premium shouldn't be paid by these people. C, they should be treated as average individuals who do not have any consent in it. Therefore, they should be treated equally in that manner. So we think that's the best version of corporate responsibility, not accounting that they are a high likelihood of risk, therefore increasing premium or reducing costs in other manners. We think that's not the application of it. But the third thing she said was, because now we can tell disease, therefore there's better planning in terms of hospitals and long term. So when he gets disease, like any other disease, can benefit anyway. How does genetic people better and disease? People understand why does it come to me anyway? Yeah, sure. insurance companies are not allowing insurance companies to take a easy way out and say, no, we do not account for this in that plan, therefore we have better structure and allow more accountability. We can ban that, we can disallow corporations from going out of operations from the beginning. That's not something we're going to contest in this debate. What we're going to contest is their aversion from risk for potential customers that you have not covered yet. The way to fix that problem, listen carefully and respond, is not to disallow them from allowing them to access to genetic tech, but to disallow them from removing themselves from potential customers. But last of all, let's talk about insurance and whether or not it's corporate insurance for us really. Because the premise they said was fair that people don't get insurance, therefore be victimized because of their previous insurance. But in that same breath, Mr. Speaker, they said it's straight up companies should be able to assess the risk and therefore charge them something higher. How is that the same thing? If indeed people are distributions of life, they should be treated in a similar manner. Why are you increasing their risk? Why are you allowing corporations to factor in this when they're accounting for their cost analysis? We think it shouldn't be factored in. We think corporations have a blanket policy that assesses this risk independent of whether or not they were going to get it to begin with. Because if you allow the structuring of corporations or insurance companies on risk that is higher, then you're going to increase price somewhere or rather. We think we don't want the price to increase, not by the person who has the genetic disease, not by other people who are not part of this debate, people who are going to pay premiums regardless of the corporation themselves. Because when they lose money and the genetic disease does begin, we think the burden should not lie on any individual, should lie on the corporation and the pool of money. So we think that you have under the debate is the worst form of restructuring. We think that's the only way you're going to cost people more.
Right. Thank you. Now the last speaker for the government and housing rights. Right.
All right, see, first of all, they talk about corporate negligence, how they neglect the insurance company, and then they suddenly come up and talk about the actual problem is not about how insurance companies, we should just ban them from backing off and certain problems. But see, the problem with that is that insurance companies make you sign contracts for certain dangers, right? That's how they actually plan it out. Because these dangers are potentially covering some spectrums of area, not every area and specific areas that you actually have to cover. So see, the ambiguity of that danger is what insurance companies use to increase their price instead. And when you have an accurate idea of what the danger actually is, that's when you decrease cost instead, right? And if you're talking about banning them from backing off, that's a whole different debate. But even if we assume that's like, we believe insurance company makes you write contracts with specific types of disease, dangers or diseases you might incur, and we believe people need a better way to know what kind of diseases they're going to incur to begin with, right? Today, this debate actually happened in two different spectrums. First of all, we wanted to argue about accessibility between the two types of people that are in serious scope, but then they wanted to talk about how this calculation works. First, I will debate under both spectrums anyway, right? First of all, the initial problem was that the initial problem was that coming up with articulator. Initial problem was that, you know, high premium, they cannot get insurance, but they're trying to see. It's kind of a bad assumption to make, right? Because what are insurance companies? We are both agreeing to it. They're profit driven, right? And they're not going to back off potential customers just like that. If you have the rise of this coming up thanks to genetic disease, we believe insurance companies are not dumb enough to always reject these people away in a way to start with. Moreover, since they actually earn profit kind of by providing insurance to these people, it's against an incentive to begin with. Insurance companies are not going to afford it. But then again comes the idea, how do you assess risk, right? See, the problem with the current risk assessment is that we don't have any idea of what this initially is, right? That's why insurance companies have the flexibility to actually charge anything, and we don't actually have a better regulatory on those kind of actions. But what happens on our side is that we can use genetics against these insurance companies, and guess what? We all need insurance companies to charge you randomly for random stuff. People insure things that don't even need to insure about, but forget things forget to insure things they should insure about, right? That is what initially what we are coming here, right? Talking about the proper risk calculation and how we find out which risk we should better take a look at and how accurately we can access it. On their side, they don't handle risk calculation well enough, but on our side, we're clearly using genetics and technology to find out a better risk assessment to begin with, rather than randomly being charged. I'll take you later. Randomly being charged about risk assessment to start with. But then again, the whole idea of becoming high, right? See, premiums will become high based on your risk and accurate risk to start with, right? And then the whole idea is that we already have government mechanisms that you cannot just arbitrarily put on any type of pricing. But even if we assume that the government mechanism is not there, we believe that fair trade-off, at least they're gonna get accepted rather than rejected away to begin with, because A, they cannot turn off all these masses away just because they think the risk is too high to take. I almost say so, right? But yeah, the risk is too high to take. They cannot really turn them away. And then again, Nitya also mentioned how this risk factor being involved would allow insurance companies to start up thinking about new plans, introducing new plans into the market. So people would opt into the insurance company and get a better message of people subscribing to it. So that was unengaged with under their side. We will clearly provide insurance company to plan better and utilize the genetic information to come up with much better plans that can actually provide for these people to begin with. But before I move on, yes.
So if I have relatives that have cancer, that gene is likely to show up in my genetic test. If I don't have relatives that have cancer, the gene is also probable to show up in my genetic test. Given that your insurance company, your risk-adverse insurance company, lose a lot of money when I get cancer, am I going to be charged a higher premium? Am I an attractive customer, given that I have a propensity to have cancer?
Right, see, you are going to charge for higher premium, right? But it's better still to get the insurance to begin with rather than being rejected. But then again, we also gave you an analysis of how we're going to reduce the cost of the whole insurance to begin with, due to many people opting in for these kind of insurance start with. But assuming that we didn't have the genetic test, what would happen is that people would just be rejected. People would think that there are masses of different types of people and cannot operate the Then again, we come up with this idea of how we rather prefer ignorance and claim back later, right? You cannot claim back later when the insurance company don't even sign a proper contract with you that they assure that they're going to cover these costs. That's why people are getting ripped off by companies, because they're paying for insurance, and when they're in the sick bed dying, these insurance companies like, no, I'm not gonna give you that money that you pay for premium, and yeah, life sucks, suck it up, you're gonna die, right? This is what's actually happening. We're actually effectively solving this problem and not giving insurance company a reason to reject your insurance when you need that insurance badly, right? But their claiming mechanism, it doesn't work really, because they never know how they're gonna claim back anyways to begin with. And the whole idea of how that premium thingy would cause you to not opt in for insurance to begin with. See, you have to understand the spectrum of people here, right? Believe that premium prices is also subjective for what kind of risk we're talking about to begin with, right? And initially we'll boil down to the risk assessment at the end. We believe it's a fair trade for us to have high premiums for risk involvement, which are accurate and measured properly. But we believe it is really unfair to have high premiums for risk we are not sure about, right? Risk that insurance company claim can happen to you or reject you for those reasons. So initially what happens is that they do not have a reason to reject you at that moment just by putting on extra risk factors to begin with. So today, what have we proved to you, right? Of how the insurance company better serve the people who are being rejected about this and how not considered a potential customer, right? Because just because a lot of assessment, people are left without insurance to start with. Provide a better way for them to get insurance in the end and have a better sales score where people can enjoy insurance plans. They completely choose to neglect the fact that we talked about a spectrum of people who do not have genetic diseases but still end up paying for these high insurance premiums when they're not supposed to. They didn't engage to that part because they didn't think it's important, and we capitalized on this debate pretty well.
Two issues from the debate that I thought of. Firstly,
insurance companies even cover these people if they know that you have a genetic defect, compared to if they don't know that you have a genetic defect. And what is the manner of CSR that practices compared to their case. Based on their policy in the first issues, insurance companies even these people, based on their policy, upon knowing the results that you have a genetic disease, would companies even cover you? That's the main question today's debate. And the logical answer here would be no, because it's extremely damaging to their business model. They don't have an incentive to financially insure you because you end up claiming more money from them, which will affect their bottom line at the end of the day. And knowing this, that insurance companies aren't answerable towards the public. They're answerable towards the investors, they're answerable towards the board of directors, and the main thing behind this is the bottom line, whether they have profits at the end of the day or not. So they don't care actually if you really consented towards getting the disease or not. But they don't really care actually whether you have you presume that they have global intention or not. All they care about is getting the profit at the end of the day, and that's what we've all agreed upon. So given that, the best case that will happen under their side is that based on the utilization of the genetic test, these people with genetic problems will get covered at a much higher premium. That's the best presumable case that will happen. And that is these individuals at the end of the day. But the worst case for them, which is more likely at the end of the day, is that they'll turn you away because you are too big a risk or liability towards their profit margin. And this is what will most likely happen. I'll tell you later. So we have to juxtapose this to the ambiguity of the individual's genetic code and the potential disease on our side, right? So under our side is ambiguous. We don't know whether you have a genetic problem or not, or even if we do know and the companies do get information, they can't utilize it at the end of the day because that's the rate, right? So at least these people under our side will get covered at a proper premium. So let's address certain issues which are brought up under this issue and different circumstance situations. Sorry, ma'am, I'll take you later. They claim that if you're a child of a parent with cancer, these insurance companies will reject you. This is slightly odd because the insurance companies now under our side have no definitive proof that you have a higher risk of getting cancer compared to their side, where they can definitively prove using genetic tests to say that you definitely have cancer, or you definitely have cancer, or you definitely contract cancer in the next few years. So especially if you are an individual who lives a healthy lifestyle, the insurance companies does this, right? They hire people to investigate your lifestyle and see whether there's a proper risk to cover you or not. If you have a healthy lifestyle on the outside, even if you have parents with cancer, it's at least more likely for the insurance company to cover you here compared to their side, where they can definitely show that you have a genetic and they definitely won't cover you based on this issue. Sorry, ma'am, right after this issue, right? Secondly, the second situation they claim that insurance companies charge extremely high flat rate because it's ambiguous, right? This came up from the rate. If it's ambiguous, they can charge a higher flat rate. But this is also odd because considering that this debate already assumed that these insurance companies are profit driven and are not stupid, raising the flat rate of every single individual because ambiguous would just turn away customers, would turn away the customer base because everyone has to pay a much higher rate to get the insurance to begin with. This was definitely, and considering that it's competition to begin with, this is definitely not logical because competition will naturally drive the price down to begin with, not drive the price higher if it's ambiguous. So at the end of the day, this idea that you raise the rate of the premium will be raised because ambiguous isn't really logical. The premium if they can definitively prove that you have a genetic disease. Yes, after you.
See, under your model, a greater number of individuals will never get insurance because of the ambiguous risk. But at least we will get those individuals under protection because of those known risks, and they are protected despite those higher risks.
So I'll answer your side, right? They will definitely get protected. But let's go to this side first, where you said we won't get protected because ambiguous. This is weird because if you won't get protected under our side, you won't get protected under your side as well. Because we use the same methods, except for your side having the additional consideration of genetic tests. We use the same methods of discovering whether you have the same risk or not. People to investigate lifestyle, something like that. So if we don't cover them on our side, we won't cover them on your side as well. And especially even worse under your side because you apply genetic tests as well. And I'll tackle this under the second part, right? The solution. First thing is they can structure new insurance plans. This is weird because it can assess that you can definitively within the next 1 year. Own the plan we want, which will charge extremely high premium. Or already charge something with a low premium when they can say that you have cancer, you'll definitely get cancer in next year. It's counterintuitive towards their bottom line and profit margin at the end of the day. But then they say, wait, then again, our government can subsidize this plan, so it'll be perfectly fine. But the question we raise on the outside is, why is this even necessary to begin with? The ambiguous way on the outside will be much better than the government having to spend a lot of money subsidizing these things, but on the outside, government doesn't need to spend a single cent subsidizing anything. So that's at least a better trade-off at the end of the day. So on outside, the flat rate meets their high premium. Lastly, this is a weird idea. They claim that a great potential of customers are there from this insurance company to poach upon. So definitely this insurance companies will look to claim because a high number of people with probable tests is something that this insurance plan will cover and things like that. But once again, a high number of people with cancer doesn't mean more money to be made, but more money to be lost, especially if you cover them, right? If you cover them, especially with their flat rate, you'll lose even more money, especially if these people will definitely get cancer, definitely claim the insurance under your side, will definitely make you lose money or at least get a lower profit margin. So it's false for them to claim that because a lot of people have cancer, this is a huge customer base that is put on. Insurance companies said, oh, stray away from them because these are people they don't want to touch. You don't want to take on the risk or liability that is definitive at the end of the day competing with this rather ambiguous. So at the end of the day, their side will be said to constantly to dole out money from insurance companies to bail these people out compared to our side, where at least it's ambiguous, at least even when these people try to explain the characters, they say that we never knew at the end of the day. So let's go to the second issue. What is an accountable manner of corporate social responsibility? So is it A, one that knows you didn't consent to inheriting a disease but still charges you with a high premium, or one that uses basic procedure to account for risk, how they usually do, and giving everyone a fair chance in getting a flat rate? Corporate social responsibility punishes individuals, companies really don't care, like I said earlier, really don't care whether you consented to diseases or not. They are answerable towards their investors and board directors. So if their bottom line looks terrible, under their side, it'll look even worse. Because people will say that your bottom line looks terrible and you did this knowingly. You did this knowingly. People had a huge risk. You knew it definitively that this was a liability to you, but you took upon that risk by allowing some corporate social responsibility stories. And that is something that's flawed on their side, because they'll never even do that to begin with. At least on our side, corporate social responsibility is something which, even if at the worst case we accrue a lower profit margin, accrue a loss, these people cannot claim to know anything or cannot claim that, oh, we did this knowingly and we should be answerable to the board directors because we did this knowingly that these people have genetic failures and things of the type. At least on our side, that's mitigatable compared to yours. That's our case. Compared to your side, that definitively these people will never get hired to work in an insurance company ever again.
Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, there were two issues today. How do you defend the common individual with genetic diseases, and what the risk of the corporation be? So the first issue, how does it converse? There was a debate between ambiguous risk and a non-risk. How does that factor into this? So we say the risk is ambiguous and we don't know who has genetic diseases, who doesn't. We'll cover everybody the same way we cover any other individual of the same group. So you will pay the same tax, there's no necessarily general flat rate, always group. But if you know and you know this person is genetically predispositioned to do this, even if you can cap the premium, you're going to increase the general tax. Or if you don't increase the general tax because it's a profit incentive, you're going to ensure that to some extent you can justify increasing it as a principle in order to cover these people. So people on your side will be generally victimized. On top of that, you're going to cover them at a worse off rate. But that's the best case scenario. We think in more cases, you know it's more likely and it's definitive, not like sky, not like you're doing dangerous activities, but you are genetically predisposed, something in your body that you are going to get cancer, they won't cover you to begin with. Why is there even an incentive for them to cover these individuals when they make a huge variety of people who are not at that risk, people who are perfectly fine, people who will pay premium for a longer duration. So if the risk is first, that is the best case where these people get covered. And even if it's not, even if they say no, we think it's far worse, individuals get cut off to begin. So we trade it off. We'd rather claim ignorance later and all those harms we talked about, but at least they're covered for that premium, for that particular time before they get cancer or the ultimate disease. So we think that's the better alternative. But the second thing depends on the common members. It's important to reduce the cost if they can factor this into this corporation. We know if that's a right thing to do or not. We think if this into the ability of you flexibly justify your rate, subjective to know that this person is a high risk. We calculate to justify why this is the society of people get arthritis. We think it generally harms people even more. So even if you can, there are people massively higher than the average individual on ground. We think even if you can reduce the cost to some extent, we think that cost will still be higher than every other person. But to which they say to subsidize the government. Why is there necessity to subsidize by the government? But the corporation should not be factoring the risk, but assuming the risk. Pay for the electoral your profit incentive. We think that's something they can do anyway, but what you want them to structure it into cost. Which brings me to my definition. How is the structure of risk, and is that structure of risk something that's good? The first thing they said, it's important to create better plans. So what is this better plan that comes from having a genetic disease? How is it the normal plan you would have when someone gets cancer? We don't you get better treatments by knowing someone has a disease. You don't know if this person is going to need a modified version of the cancer. Things that already happen right now are common knowledge enough for you to have better plans when things go wrong. So the calculus is not to prevent the worst harm. Yeah, better plans we talked about is to not lose much money. So if not losing as much money, who assumes the cost? It's not your profit incentive or your profit-making corporation that's going to assume the cost. They just put a little bit of money in everyone's pockets, so nobody really loses rate, but they don't assume that cost. People generally pay higher prices. That's not the case. They won't put out of their profits, they'll charge higher premiums. But we would want them to pay the higher profits. They should take out profits and be paying for these higher costs. They should be taking out their profits and ensuring people have access to this thing. So we think it's corporate social responsibility. If we think you're benefiting from the masses paying premium and this individual who has genetic disease who had no consent to it, you should be paying the ultimate cost, even maybe a strain on your profit. So we think if that's the risk calculus, that risk calculus is effectively horrible in the way we move harm or move the cost of such cancer. But then the last thing they said was it's important because if we can generally decrease the cost because we can effectively move it around, that's important the way corporations pool money together. How is a corporation's capacity to pool money together going to be benefited by the existence of a genetic disease? We pool money together to allow a buffer anyway. When things go wrong, when there's a recession, generally we have a pool of money as a buffer. We think genetic disease should be involved in the buffer. It shouldn't be recalculated in a separate system and incorporated into allowing this. We think if it do not have consent, it should not be restructured. That's how we think.
Alright, to be honest, when we were doing this motion on the side of government, I thought, Jesus Christ, I had to defend greedy bastard insurance companies. But after thinking about it for a while, yeah, they're greedy, yeah, they're profit driven, but we realized that we could use those very same motives to better the people by providing genetic tests for them. How does this work? We think that the reason why insurance companies have always rejected people in the past is because it's just bad business. There's simply no way to assess whether they were risks or not. But now we tell you that there's a less chance of them turning people away because of the genetic tests that they can do, they can now accurately assess those risks because they are profit driven and profit driven companies want more customers. But now because they can calculate the likelihood of that person getting cancer and they can set the premiums accordingly, yes, we tell you that the premiums may be higher, but at least they won't reject you. Like they would understand. When they will reject you before, because they just had simply no way of assessing whether you were a risk or not. But now, by providing your genetic test to them, they can now more easily say, right, what's the benefit of providing this particular premium at a particular cost to someone who has cancer. We tell you that's a fair trade-off. For example, you may pay premiums for 60 years, but at least you have a safety net. So whenever you have cancer, at least insurance covers you. Insurance companies, on the other hand, why they would do this? Because they can cover their costs. They can set premium to an acceptable level where they can still be, all right, maybe he has a cancer, maybe a disease, maybe he doesn't, but their actuaries will actually calculate. So they will be able to, yeah, we set premiums high enough, we actually make back our money or maybe even more. So they are more likely to accept people under these circumstances. So I talked to you about the incentives of insurance companies, right? And how we use that to better the people. But which side provides better access? And I talked to you about there's two cases here, right? People who have genetic predispositions. Now we told you that they are more likely to accept it because insurance companies can conduct better risk assessment. The ability to view genetic tests means that insurance companies also have an obligation to account for genetic risk when they structure their plans, which means that they convenient excuse that, sorry, you won't cover our plan, we didn't know was no longer possible under our model. But we also talked to you about the second case, right? People who don't have genetic predispositions. Previously, they will be rejected out of turn because insurance companies will say, well, you're kind of high high risk, you're a family member who died of cancer, we don't think that you're good business. But now they're able to provide insurance companies with proof that a family member having cancer was not necessarily genetically inherited by them. So again, someone who was rejected before and would be rejected often by an insurance company is now accepted under our model, right? So, right, what was a trade-off we're willing to make here? Yes, when insurance companies have access to this information, they will charge higher premiums. We think that like insurance companies are just like that, right? They want to make money. And but we told you that was the trade-off we were willing to make. That compared to the world where insurance companies reject you out of turn, now they would set high premiums, but now the individuals will be able to accurately decide whether you are willing to pay those premiums for the safety net. And now since you know you have a genetic defect, insurance companies know you have a genetic defect, that a balance of harms will now exist. So what's the best case scenario under our model? We told you that more people are covered compared to status quo because, like I said, an ambiguous risk becomes a known risk. In that previously you could not possibly know whether you had a genetic predisposition, now you would know. So we told you it's better for business. That's why exactly why insurance companies would opt into viewing genetic tests, and that's why they would set premiums at a level where they could still make money, but at least an individual would now be covered where they couldn't before. But we also told you that once you know like ambiguous risk becomes a known risk, that insurance companies can set lower premiums for everybody, because now you don't have to account for things that you could not possibly know before. But wait a minute, just because you can set lower premiums, does it mean that you will? Yes, because there's not just one insurance company out there. There's a vast array of competing insurance companies. And when there are competing insurance companies who will also lower their prices to capture their share of the market, we think that we force insurance companies to lower premiums for everybody. We thought it was pretty straightforward. I'm so glad that I did not have to defend insurance companies. Instead, you have to defending the average man, as they would like to call it. Very proud to so small.
Thank you. Also for taking stuff.
Okay.